Welcome everybody to the Leadership Conversation podcast. Of course, my name is Derek, and today I have Nina with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Nina Golde, and I am the CEO and founder of the podcast studio. And I'm really happy to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So I started out about your journey. I know you mentioned to me earlier that you're from Cameroon originally. What was that transition like from going to Cameroon to here?
Oh, wow. So that happened some 20 plus years ago. So it's been a minute. And I remember, and not to age myself, I'm going to be 40 in July.
Aging is not bad though.
So I'm going to be 40 in July. And so imagine coming to the US, the great United States of America. I still think it's a great country.
Oh, yeah.
And just having to leave all of your friends because my dad migrated here and my siblings and I came later after he'd been here, my dad and my stepmother, and then my siblings and I came. And so having to just start from scratch, finding new friends, and we lived in New Hampshire. So it's like the new friends, it's the weather, the snow. I'd never seen snow before.
I imagine in New Hampshire.
Yes. And then just being a black person. I never knew I was black until I came to America.
Really?
Yes. Like I was just Nina. And then so taking on this new identity as a black woman in a foreign country, having an accent, because French is my first language and we speak English and French in Cameroon, but our colonial masters were the British. So our English is British English versus American English. So there's definitely an accent in how I speak. So always having to deal with, oh, where are you from? Your accent sounds funny. So it was interesting. And I mean, here I am.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. I know we spoke on the phone first off, when you told me, or when I found out that there was like a podcast studio, it popped up on my timeline, obviously because of whatever kind of algorithms that was feeding it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's a podcast studio. That's cool. And I was like, wait, that says RGV. I was like, is that here in the Valley? Which was interesting to me. So then I sent you a message and we talked. And I was asking you, where you were from, because I heard the accent and you told me Cameroon. And about 5.5, 6 years ago, I tell you, I actually found my dad's side of the family. And we traced my ancestry all the way back to Cameroon. And then I was supposed to be part of the tribe. I can't remember the name, but
Bamileke.
Yeah, Bamileke tribe. So
yes.
I thought that was pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I thought that was wild because we had this conversation when I was going to Houston and I'm sitting there like, what are the odds that this person calls me and then he actually has Cameroonian ancestry and from the Bamileke tribe. For all of my Cameroonians out there, you guys know. And Bamileke, just so you know, Bamileke people are like the Chinese people.
Really?
Of my country.
Explain that.
In terms of the fact that Chinese people are so entrepreneurial. Yes, Bamileke people will make anything. Yes.
That's interesting because, as you know, I'm in the military and I retired recently.
Yes.
But prior to retiring, you have to go clear, like what they call clear a military installation. And I cleared this one particular place. And this lady, I spoke to her and she was from Cameroon. I was like, oh, cool. And then she looked at me and she said, oh, yeah, they're in the Bamileke tribe. And I was like, how do you know that? She said, are you a hustler? I was like, yeah. She was like, do you like money? I was like, yeah. She was like, are you like a go-getter? I said, yeah. And she said, yeah, you're part of the tribe then. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So that's like a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing I bet you, I don't know if I haven't done research. And the first time I went, the first time I went to Cameroon in over how many years was last year. So I bet you if you go to Cameroon and you look at any successful establishment, 1 out of 10 of those establishments are going to, that's too much. I'm thinking 5 out of 10 of those establishments are going to be by Bamileke people.
Oh,
like
nice.
They're so entrepreneurial.
Yeah. When she said it to me, I did a little bit of research on it, but that's one thing that I really want to do. I want to dive back into my family history on both sides, my mom and dad, but more so my dad because I missed out on it for a long period of time. Like I said, we just met him about 5 years ago. So I want to dive into it and I want to know everything about it. But I can trace the ancestry back from when we were taken from Cameroon.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So let's talk about this. I know you went to the University of Nevada, right?
Yes.
And you majored in
pharmacy.
Yeah.
I'm a pharmacist by training.
How was that journey? Like, what made you decide to be a pharmacist?
I think I'd always known I was going to be like a medical professional. I just didn't know what. Both of my parents are accountants by trade, so they are more into numbers than into the medical field. So in terms of like the guidance as to, go be a medical doctor or be a pharmacist or a nurse or whatever, I didn't get that guidance because my parents are numbers people. They're not medical. So I kind of had to trace that journey for me. Like I just knew I wanted to be in the medical field. And my dad said he remember one time I said I was going to be like a pharmaceutical engineer or something. And when I came to the US, I was like, okay, given that I'm this, however, how old was I? I was like 21. Given that I'm 21, like what can I do that is still going to fulfill this medical need for me?
So wait, that was your thought to ask? Okay.
That was me thinking, because I've always been like that. Like I know I wanted to be a medical professional. I just didn't know which way was going to get me there really quickly.
Right.
And I looked into med school. So med school was my backup plan, which is kind of wacky now that I think about it in hindsight. But that's why I believe in guidance, having like great mentors, people to mentor you.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I had great mentorship and like with people from like the medical field, I definitely would have gone to med school versus going to pharmacy school. And not to talk like crap on my pharmacist colleagues, but we all know what is going on in pharmacy. And I think if I had better mentorship, I would have gone to med school. But because I was looking at the fact that, well, it's going to take me a shorter period of time to be done and have money to support my family, I decided to go for pharmacy. And when I decided to go for pharmacy, I actually went for like the accelerated pharmacy program because that's how quickly I wanted to like
get done,
and just start my life. So that's how I ended up with pharmacy, but med school was my backup plan.
So what was like the driving force? Was it, because I tell people all the time, like, if, I love the things that I had in the military, but I wouldn't have did them for free, right? So what would be, like, what was the driving force behind the medical field? Is it something like, was it like financial, or was it your ability to want to help people, or what was it?
So with my driving force for medical, like I have a sister who has sickle cell disease. So it has always been in my mind to take care of people. I just didn't know how to go about it. And like I said, going back to like the mentorship, like I knew I needed to take care of people. My sister was sick. We're trying to figure out the best treatments for her. And while I was doing research about like the best treatments, you start looking at drug options, you start looking at stem cell research and all of that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. There's this pharmacy program, there's this thing that I can do and actually make an impact and talk to people, see my clients and just help like guide their treatment routes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that was it. It really stemmed from my sister having a rare disease, a red blood disorder. And then, I decided to do that. And it was faster than medical school.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'll switch subjects real quick. I know you mentioned that your mom and dad were numbers people, right? but you also let me know that they had like a great entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel like that's where you got your entrepreneurial spirit from, or like?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I wonder if, and these are things that I'm very interested in learning as a person, nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if part of that too, like seeing my parents like have their businesses. I remember from a young age, my younger sister and I we had a pear tree, avocado. In Cameroon, it's pear, but in the U.S., it's avocado.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so we had an avocado tree in our backyard, and my younger sister and I would like literally cut avocados and stand in front of our gate and sell them.
Oh,
My
nice.
dad was infuriated because we grew up privileged, so it's like you would see a fancy house and there's like little children selling avocados in there. He got so upset the time he caught us, but we're like, we want to make money. Yeah. So my siblings and I are very, very entrepreneurial. Yeah.
That's good. What does your sister do?
My sister, the sister I'm referring to is a nurse.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is that the one that you said was in Houston?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And is she thinking about opening up a podcast studio as well?
No, that's my sister-in-law. See,
gotcha.
Entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
That's my sister-in-law. Yes. She's thinking about doing a content studio. So more expanded. Yeah.
Okay. So came from Cameroon over 20 years ago, started as you wanted to help people. So you jumped into the pharmacy industry, but we're in a podcast studio that belongs to you, right? I know you mentioned to me about the things that happened with your son and your brother. Can you kind of walk us through that journey and what happened and what led you to where you are now?
Yeah. So it's been a long journey to here. And knowing that as of May last year, the podcast studio wasn't even a thought.
Not even a thought.
Not a thought. Not a thought whatsoever. So in 2023, Mother's Day of 2023, I lost my youngest sibling. He was 16 years old. No pre-medical conditions, nothing. He just didn't wake up.
Oh, man.
And yes, so that was the most pain I've felt in my entire life. I've never experienced that kind of pain. We had never lost anybody in our family.
Yeah.
Prior to that. So it was devastating. I felt like my entire life shifted, and my perspective on how I view life and how quickly the breath that we have can be gone was brought to full, what's the word? It was brought to me so clearly because I don't think prior to that, I thought I was arrogant. I thought that I was going to live forever.
I think most people do, you know?
Yeah. I thought I was going to live forever. Well, I didn't think I was going to live forever, but I thought I knew what was going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Whereas now I don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, 5 seconds from now. And it was a very, very difficult experience because my younger brother, he was my younger brother, but it was kind of my child because we raised him. It's just, yeah, it was a very, 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 very tough thing. So that happened in 2023. And then a year later, because we laid my brother to rest on Father's Day of 2023. Fast forward to Father's Day 2024, my siblings and my dad come to the Valley to spend Father's Day with me. And the kids are in the pool. My son, my youngest son, he's 5. He was learning how to swim. So his swim instructor was on the way home. So I get out of the pool to go change and dry up. So my sister was at the pool. So I'm like, okay, she's watching the kids. But from my room, I just hear her scream where is Noah? And once I heard that, I didn't need to hear anything else. I just bolted.
Yeah.
I bolted to the pool, and I'm running to the pool, and I see her pulling him out of the pool, and his body is lifeless.
Man.
So, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that happened. And I go back to my core belief, which is Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I have nobody else to scream to. I have nobody else to cry out to but Jesus. And my mom tells me, oh, well, she just heard me screaming Jesus because she was inside and she just heard me screaming and yelling, Jesus, Jesus. I was yelling frantically.
Yeah.
And I kick in my medical professional side of me kicks in. I start doing chest compressions. I tell my sister to call 911 and I'm doing these chest compressions. My son's eyes are fixated. I'm literally doing this and thinking, oh my God, my baby's gone.
Yeah. I know I can imagine that's really tough.
Mm-hmm. Like I heard myself saying, he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead. He's gone. And I lose everything in that. I don't know how long that, I can't even remember how much time went by, and I give up and I'm holding him and I'm crying and I'm screaming because there's nothing else. I'm like, oh my God, there's nothing else. What else am I going to do? Like, did this just happen? Because he was gone. And my daughter, who was 10 years old at the time, is in the pool. And she comes out, like she's screaming. Everybody is frantic. They're screaming, they're yelling. And she sees me. I think I don't know. That kid, I don't know. I think she looks at me and she sees I'm gone. Like my mom is gone. Like, and she takes over the chest compressions.
That's amazing, man.
The most violent chest compressions I've ever seen in my life because she's 10. And out of desperation, she's saying, I can't watch my brother die, you know? And she takes over the chest compressions. She's doing them. And then I come back to myself and then I start joining her and we're doing it. So I'm telling, as she's doing the chest compressions, I'm blowing into his mouth, just trying to do something. And God, so mercifully, God, Jesus, so mercifully, my son starts to cough.
Man, amen, bro. I can only imagine. And I think when you mentioned it to me, the reason why the story touched me a lot is because my son's name is Noah as well, right? And we were, my youngest daughter, Noemi, we were on a trip in Louisville. We were in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and we were on a trip in Louisville. And whenever you meet my wife, she'll tell you, my youngest daughter just likes to run for like no specific reason. We were visiting my uncle on my dad's side who flew home from Japan for a while. And he came down to Kentucky so we can see him. We met at the Airbnb they were staying in before we went to dinner. And I told my oldest son, Derek Jr., DJ, I said, hold your sister's hand, man. Don't let her go. She likes to run. And, you know, kids, I wouldn't have blamed him. But my kid, he was 16, 17 at the time. And he was kind of like, you know, didn't want to hold his hand or doing it kind of nonchalantly. And then my daughter started running. And she started running towards the street. And we kept saying, no, Noemi, come back. And just like most kids, when you run after them, they run faster. So she ran in the street, and there was a car parked on the side of the road, and then there was a vehicle that was coming. And we screamed loud, and I couldn't catch up with her. So I slammed my hand on the roof of the car, and it was a Chevy Tahoe. The Chevy Tahoe missed her, I want to say, by about a foot. And me and my wife were like, quietly on the way to the restaurant, we were just saying, man, I don't know what I would have done if that had happened. Like if she actually got hit by a car. And what's crazy is that me and my wife call my daughter a miracle because I know she doesn't care if I say this, so don't get mad if I say this. But what happened was my wife has one fallopian tube and it's not that good. And my son Noah was an IVF kid. So the doctor told her that if we ever had kids again, then we would have to do the same procedure. And when we were having a conversation about trying to have another kid, we were thinking about saving money up and going back because, as you know, IVF is expensive for, being in the medical industry. And she was having stomach pains one day and she had a really bad attitude. Don't forget that. She had a really bad attitude. And the doctor told her that she was, long story short, the doctor told her that she was pregnant. That's the reason why. And we were like, what? It has to be like a tubal pregnancy. Yeah. And then we went and got an ultrasound and they said, there it is. She was 7.5, almost 8 weeks pregnant. Yep. So that's why we consider, we know that it's a miracle. And if that truck had hit her that day, it would have been like detrimental. They probably would have had to put us in a mental institution. I'm serious. Right. So, but yeah, I can only imagine, the loss of a child and how it will feel, or even like the possibility of a loss of a child. But, just like you said, God so mercifully, gave him another chance. He put that spirit of you and your daughter actually working together to try to save him. How did you view your daughter after she helped with the chest compressions?
I said I wasn't going to cry because I felt like I'm in awe of that child. I'm in awe of all of my kids.
And she was 10 at the time?
Yes.
Man.
I'm in awe of all of my kids. I look at her and I told her, like right there when he started breathing, I just held him, I squeezed him so hard and I looked at her, I said, you're a hero.
Yeah, she is.
I said, you're a hero. You saved your brother. You're a hero. I there's no words. Like we never ever trained our kids, like gave them CPR training. And I advise all parents to do that. My husband and I are both medical professionals. So we have to do CPR training to keep our license active, But I say, look, especially if you have a pool, train your kids, like teach them CPR, choking, teach these kids how to do CPR. My daughter never ever took a CPR lesson. I guess it was just from watching me doing the chest compressions. Yeah. And she took over. And God knows I needed somebody to take over because I had given up. Yeah. Like I was in so much despair. Psalms 18 was like the scripture that came to me in that moment. Like if you have time, read it. It was, I'm nothing without God.
Oh yeah.
I'm nothing without God. And for him to do that, to save my son in such a fashion, he has my entire life. He has my life. Yeah. He has my life. There's no question about that. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
It makes the moments more special, if you can go from, almost having your child pass away, right? It makes you feel like, all the moments are precious. And I know we talked about this before, but you took some time off afterwards, right? And then, the reason why you took the time off, obviously, is because you wanted to stay close to your kids. Having such an experience like that'll make you want to be near them. And then you're riding down Nolana one day, and what happened?
Yeah, so I took about 4.5 months of work, and I don't even know where. I think we came from somewhere with the kids, and then I'm in Nolana. Actually, Nolana and 10th, I remember. And from nowhere, it's just like, I'm like, wouldn't it be great to have a podcast studio?
Just out of nowhere.
From nowhere with my kids in the car. And my daughter is like, oh yeah, that would be cool. My son is like, typical boy. Yeah. Like, interesting. What prompted that thought? That was his, like, what prompted, because he's always into like digging to find out what prompts what's the reason behind your actions. And I was like, I don't know. It just popped in my mind. Like, wouldn't it be great to have a podcast studio where people can come and record their podcast. And from there, I spoke to my husband about it. He's like, oh, actually,
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea, babe. Like, where did that come from? I'm like, it's not from me because I'm not a social media person. My friends and siblings laugh about me because I can only deal with one social media at a time. Yeah. So I'm only on Instagram. Yeah. I can't do WhatsApp. Yeah. I can't do Facebook.
It gets to be overwhelming.
It's too much. I've always been that way. And so for the idea of a podcast studio to come to me, I knew for a fact it wasn't me. From like the get-go, from the conception of the idea to me speaking it out, to it actually happening, I know it's not my idea. Yeah. So, and I think that kind of takes a little bit of the stress off me, where with other endeavors that I do, sometimes I feel the need for them to succeed because of ego. Like I have no ego in this because I know that this is inspired action. This is inspired by God. This is not about me. And this is here for people to share their stories and be empowered. Yeah. And that was the tagline. And Kim is like empowering voices, because I just felt like I needed, it also came from me. It was for me because I needed to empower my own voice, and why not empower other people's voices along the way? So
So I know me and my wife are in something called, you ever heard of Palm Valley Church?
Yes. I actually started going to the Edinburgh one. My family and I started going there. Yeah.
The Edinburgh one is new, but you have some people that's been going to the Mission one, and then they went to the Edinburgh one, and it was like, oh, it's not the same. So it's like a little different. Okay. When we came down here, we decided to go to Palm Valley Church. We've always, I love God and want to get interested, but you get older, you got kids, and as you noticed from how your daughter was performing the chest compressions, kids don't always pay attention to what you say, but they definitely pay attention to what you do. So me and my wife wanted to kind of set the example, and we started going to church. We went to Palm Valley. Palm Valley had this class called Re-Engage. It wasn't marriage counseling, but it was a class about marriage, but it was focused around the Bible, right? Essentially saying what marriage is, why you should be this way. And it's not about being in love or roses or flowers or gifts. It's about actually it's sacrificial is what it is. So we connected with everyone in the class. And then they had another class that was coming up soon called Rooted. And Rooted lets you get closer to God, where it tells you certain things about it asks you thought-provoking questions. And what's leading me to this conversation is what you said when you were riding the car on Nolana, is that, the question was like, do you think God talks to you? Right. And most people were saying like, oh, well, I don't see a burning bush or anything like that. And my thought was that I don't think that it's the fact that God doesn't talk to us the same way he did back in the day. I believe that we are more busier than we were back in the day, right? Absolutely. So just like you say, you have social media, you have jobs, you have obligations with family, friends, and things like that. So it makes it harder for you to like pay attention and listen to, what he has to say. And sometimes he talks to you directly. Sometimes he puts a thought in your head, and sometimes he gives you, an idea or a direction, and you just take it and run from there. So I do believe that things like that happen for a reason. So you got the podcast. Well, first off, immigrated to here 20 years ago, medical school, mom and dad were entrepreneurs, right? And then you had sadly, your brother passed away, and then your son almost passed away exactly a year later to the date, Father's Day. And then you had this thing to open up the podcast studio. So how do you feel now that you have it? I know that it's amazing that you empower people's voices, but how do you feel that you have the studio now?
Nobody has asked me that.
That's why we're here. I ask questions.
How do I feel? I feel, because it's not about me, that's how I feel. I feel like it's a journey. And I was on Instagram yesterday or 2 days ago, and I saw this post that said, life is the alchemy of becoming.
Dive into that one for me.
Life is the alchemy of becoming, meaning that life is about becoming. Life is not about chasing things, chasing people, chasing places. Life is about becoming
Oh, nice.
who you're supposed to be. It's like, as in a way, if you like using the word chase, is chasing your higher self. And this is what the studio is teaching me. Every single day I come in here, or just having this, I wake up differently because I'm fueled by purpose.
It's nice.
I'm fueled by purpose. I'm fueled by the excitement of who's going to walk through this door and what is their story.
Yeah. To listen to a shared story.
Yes. I'm fueled by just understanding that, oh my God, this is what it feels like to surrender and trust. Because any entrepreneur out there knows, like, entrepreneurship is not for
it's not for the weak.
the weak. And in knowing that, I still have joy. I have so much peace because I'm like, oh God, I finally know why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because when my brother died, that was the question. I'm like, his life was so short.
Yeah.
What was his purpose?
Yeah.
Why was it here? And I'm like, so what is the purpose of life? Why am I even here?
Yeah.
You know, why? I had so many why questions towards God. And I could not even imagine the pain my mom was feeling, like the pain she was feeling after losing a child.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now, in a way, I kind of feel like I don't know everything. I don't know how my life is supposed to unfold, but it's exciting because I'm trusting the Alpha and the Omega to lead my step. Yeah. So that's how it feels having this. Is every day is like, okay, what have you got for me today?
Like, what's next?
What's next? What are we doing?
It's so interesting. Like, everything that you're saying is essentially what we've been talking about. I think it's questions that people struggle with all the time. So another question that they asked us was like, you know, do you ever question God? You know, I know people would say, why? I've questioned God a lot. But what I've found, so I just turned 44, right? But what I've found out is that things happen for a reason, you know? And sometimes when things happen and you may not understand them, it may unfold to you later. Oh, that was the reason why we did XYZ, right? So I really like that. And I like that fact that, you know, you opened the studio and it led you to listen to people and empower their voices. Because I'll tell you, the reason why I started my podcast is because I like talking to people, but I learn something every single time I have a conversation with someone. I've never had a, you know, any trouble talking to people. But when I started my podcast, I learned something every time. After the podcast, I'll jot something down off camera so they can't see me, and I'll say, "Man, that was like a really good line. I'll use that later, or I'll give it." And one of my friends, Eric, who's going to see this podcast, so I'm not stealing your stuff, E. So just hear me out. But what happened when we were teaching together in Fort Knox, he had a philosophy. It's not so much a quote, but it's a philosophy. And his philosophy was, the knowledge that you have is useless if you cannot give it to someone else in a manner that they can understand. And when you think about that, it's like, you can know everything, but if you can't share that knowledge, then it's useless. And you're thinking about it with your coworkers, with your friends, with your kids, with anybody, right? So the knowledge that you have is useless unless you can share it with people in a manner that they can understand.
Absolutely.
And I truly do believe that.
Absolutely. I 1,000% believe that.
Yeah.
And funny that you bring that up. For me, that is also one of the driving forces for somebody who is camera shy, who doesn't like social media. I don't like being out there. It's like I know a lot of people in the Valley, but it's just because I've just been called to know people.
Yeah.
But for somebody who doesn't like being in front of the spotlight, that's how I also know it's validation for me, knowing that this is inspired by God.
Oh, yeah.
This is what I've been called to do. The visibility is something I've been called to do. And because he's called me to do this, I'm always reminded of Moses and Aaron's story where Moses is like, I can't speak. Aaron, he enables Aaron, and that's me and communication. Having a podcast. So I have my own podcast, which is the Growth
I've
Studio.
seen a couple.
Yes. And the Growth Studio is actually a behind the scenes of creating the podcast studio. And the reason why I did that was because, like you said, if you cannot communicate, if you have knowledge that you cannot communicate to people, then it's pointless having that knowledge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the Growth Studio is an opportunity for me to be a better communicator.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And I say this because I know there's a lot of people who want to do their own podcast. They want to do it, but it's like, well, I can't speak. I'm like, get in front of the camera.
Yeah, that's the only way to learn.
Just speak in front of, just
do it.
Just do it.
There's a mic, there's a camera, speak.
Speak. And speak. And the more you speak, the better you become at speaking, And I just did one of my things I hate doing. But it's from hearing myself speak and from hearing myself do it over and over and over again, I know I'm becoming better and better as a communicator.
Oh, yeah.
And the better I become as a communicator, then the better tool I am for God to use me to get the messages that he needs out there. So me having a podcast and doing it is really an improvement of myself so I can be a better tool. So, but what are you doing with the talents that God has given you?
Yeah, that's true.
Are you working to improve them? Yeah. Because there's work out there that needs to be done.
Yeah.
But we need people to actually identify those talents, work on those talents, because some people have talents that they don't have to work on. But I don't even believe that. I think if you have talents, the more reason why you should work on making it better so you could be an amazing tool to serve people, And so that's what the podcast is about.
I like it. So as we wrap up, I usually do this with every podcast episode. In my podcast about leadership, I know that you were hesitant, right? So, but I'm glad that you actually followed through. I'm glad you came through. I'm glad that you accepted the question, because I know talking about death is not easy. Talking about, someone almost dying is not easy, especially it being your own son. But I am glad that you decided to push through. And it's a leadership conversation, because I do feel like there's leadership on the other side of tragedy. There's leadership on the other side of an emotional situation. If you can have this situation and something happens to you and you can come out on the other side better, or you can tell your story about why you came out on the other side better, that's worth sharing. That's leadership. It's like resilience in it, It's pretty amazing. So as we wrap up, I do want to ask you, so I read books. Well, let me take that back. I listen to books, right? For some reason, I can't sit down and read a book. And I've listened to an extreme amount of books. It's ridiculous. And I have a weird thing that I do. The books that I listen to, I buy the hardcover and I put them on the shelf.
I did the
same thing. Nice.
I do the same thing.
People ask me that, and I said I hadn't read the book. But the reason why I do it is because, for instance, my daughter or my son or like a friend that said, hey, I'm going through a rough time. Most of them are about leadership. So I'll say, hey, man, I read this book about, how to be in charge when you're not leading. Here, I have the copy. You can get it. But I still have it on my son. So that's the reason why I did that.
Okay.
But with that being said, I always ask, do you have a particular leadership book that you like, or maybe a quote that has something to do with leadership that you'd like to share?
That's a very difficult one. As you can see, those books, those are all of my books.
I like Dave Ramsey. I see Dave Ramsey up there.
He helped us change our financial lives. That's a difficult one, I swear. I can't pick one because I'm a leader in my professional life. So I read a lot about leadership, but I think a lot of the books I've been reading lately are leaning towards emotional intelligence, because I think I need to be aware of myself as a leader and also be aware of the strengths of the people that I lead. So I would probably say the book on emotional intelligence, EQ, I can't remember the author, but it, like a specific quote, I don't know. I
Can't think of one. Nothing that
can't
stands
think
out. Nothing your
there's
mom
so
or dad
many.
said to you a lot, or
I think honestly, it comes down to servant leadership. Like that would be like the most thing that I can relate to, just the importance of being a servant leader. I am a servant leader to my core. And yeah, but I can't find a quote.
Well, let me ask you this, and I guess that's to fill the place of a quote. What do you feel like is the most important aspect of leadership? Like in your own personal opinion?
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Explain that one a little bit.
Emotional intelligence through and through. I think as a leader, you need to be self-aware of yourself. And you also need to be emotionally intelligent on how to talk to the people that you're responsible for.
Nice.
Because leadership to me is a responsibility. It's a gift.
It is.
And how you treat the people you're responsible for says a lot about you, and it also says a lot about your future.
Yeah.
So to me, it's very, very, very important that I communicate effectively. I'm clear about the directions I'm giving to the people that are responsible, that I'm responsible for, but I'm also hearing them out and seeing them as individuals.
Yeah, and not just a worker.
And not just workers, and not just about numbers. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Okay. Hey, well, look, Nina, I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. Thank you for letting us use our studio. It's an amazing studio. If you guys are looking for a studio in the Rio Grande Valley, this is a place that you can go to. I don't know that there's another studio, but do you have an email address or something that can reach out to you, or maybe a Facebook page or Instagram page?
Yeah, we do have an Instagram page. We're on Instagram, the Podcast Studio RGV, and we have our website, www.thepodcaststudiorgv.com.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, guys, thank you for... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, for sure.
It was really insightful questions, and I really enjoyed speaking with you.
For sure. Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Leadership Conversation podcast, and we'll talk to you next time. Keep leading.